Day for bills. Number 2, road legislation amendment, speed limits bill, resumption of the adjourned debate.
Sorry, was there... The member for Oatly was actually on his feet. I'm sorry, but he's not normally that quick, but he certainly was this time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to speak on the Road Legislation Amendment Speed Limits Bill 2025, introduced by the member for Balmain, and to note that the opposition will be opposing this legislation. Let me be very clear at the outset. Road safety is an issue that every member of this House takes very seriously. Every life lost on our roads is a tragedy, and every serious injury leaves a lasting impact on family and friends, communities and emergency services. Governments and policymakers and communities all share the responsibility of improving road safety outcomes and ensuring that our roads are the safest as possible. However, good intentions do not automatically produce good legislation. While this bill seeks to argue that lowering speed limits across large parts of our road network will improve safety outcomes, the opposition does not support the approach taken in this legislation. This bill proposes sweeping one-size-fits-all changes to speed limits across New South Wales, including reducing school zone speed limits from 40 to 30 kilometres and lowering the default speed limit on many built-up urban streets to 30 kilometres. At first glance, such proposals may appear simple and appealing, but road safety policy is rarely simple, and the regulation of speed limit requires careful, evidence-based decisions that take into account the unique characteristics of individual roads, local communities, traffic patterns, congestion and surrounding infrastructure. Something that works in Balmain may not work in Bathurst, and that the key here is we cannot allow Macquarie Street to override the local knowledge of councils and indeed local residents who deserve the right to have their say on any changes that will impact their local community. And that is why New South Wales decisions about speed limits are traditionally made by Transport for New South Wales in consultation, I should say, with local councils and communities. These decisions are informed by detailed road safety assessments, engineering considerations, and the local context of roads involved. This system exists for a reason. Speed zones or speed zoning is not something that should be determined by blanket legislation, mandates imposed from this place. Roads across New South Wales vary enormously, from dense inner city streets to suburban collector roads to regional town centres that may be appropriate for one street may be entirely inappropriate for another. And this bill before the House ignores this complexity. Instead, it seeks to impose uniform statewide framework, Mr. Speaker, that would significantly alter speed limits across urban areas, school zones and other designated locations, regardless of local circumstances. And in doing so, members, it understands the existing system where transport experts and local communities work together to determine what speed limits are appropriate. The opposition believes that speed limit decisions should continue to be made by the experts within their local communities, supported by Transport for New South Wales and in partnership with local members, councillors and communities they represent. Importantly, Mr. Speaker, nothing in the current framework prevents lower speed limits from being introduced where they are appropriate. In fact, across New South Wales, we have already seen a number of councils and a number of local communities trial or introduce a 30-kilometre zone on certain streets where there is strong local support, where there is local conditions that justify such changes. And that is exactly how the system should work. Local decisions based on local circumstances made by local communities. And this bill removes that flexibility to determine for all of us. It replaces local discretion with a rigid legislative framework that would mandate lowest speed limits across broad categories of roads, regardless of whether these changes are necessary, regardless practical or supported by local community. So the opposition has also concerns about practical implications of such sweeping changes. Reducing default speed limits across large areas of urban road networks would require extensive changes to signage, extensive changes to road markings, and of course enforcement frameworks. It would create significant implementation costs, potential confusion for motorists, particularly in areas where road conditions may not warrant such drastic reductions. And as a member of this place for now 15 years, Mr. Speaker, and before that 8 years in local government, I, probably one of few, I should say, in this chamber, still attend, I should say, my council's local traffic committee, which is now called the Traffic Forum that each council has. And I've seen these changes occur over the last 20 plus years of public life. And if not done properly, without community consultation, without consultation from residents and the community as a whole, it can cause many significant problems. It is also worth noting that road safety outcomes are influenced by many factors beyond just speed limits alone. Infrastructure design, road maintenance, driver behaviour, vehicle safety technology, enforcement and education all play critical roles in reducing road trauma. Focusing solely on blanket reductions in speed limits risks oversimplifying what is in reality a complex policy challenge. We should absolutely continue to pursue initiatives that improve safety around schools and protect vulnerable road users and make our neighbourhood streets safer. But these initiatives must be carefully designed, carefully targeted, and they must be evidence-based. So in many cases, improving pedestrian crossings, enhancing signage, upgrading intersections, improving lighting and investing in safer road infrastructure can deliver significant safety benefits without imposing broad statewide mandates that may not affect local conditions, local streets and local suburbs. So the opposition believes that the current framework already allows for these improvements to occur. Where there is strong evidence that lower speed limits will improve safety, and where local communities support these changes, Transport for New South Wales, in partnership with local councils, have the ability to introduce them. And that approach, Mr. Speaker, ensures decisions are informed by local knowledge, local expert advice, rather than a blanket legislative requirements. This bill also raises broader concerns about the role of Parliament in regulating detailed operational matters that are traditionally managed by transport authorities and by local councils, Mr. Speaker, and of course being a former mayor and councillor of your local council, no doubt you agree too. Parliament should set strategic direction, ensure accountability, but it should not seek to micromanage road safety zones across thousands of individual streets and neighbourhoods across the state. That level of operational decision-making is best left for those with the expertise, the data, and on-the-ground understanding on how road networks function. Speaker, it is important that we continue to have a constructive, evidence-based discussion about road safety, and we welcome initiatives that generally improve road safety outcomes and protect the most vulnerable road users, particularly children. And only the other day, Mr. Speaker, I was walking my child to school. But we must also ensure that changes to road rules are practical, proportionate, and supported by communities. This bill does not achieve that balance. Instead, it proposes sweeping statewide changes that override local decision-making, remove flexibility from the existing system, and impose a one-size-fits-all model on road networks that is anything but uniformed. And for these reasons, unfortunately to the member for Balmain, the opposition cannot support this legislation. We believe the current approach, where Transport for New South Wales works collaboratively with local councils and communities to determine appropriate speed limits, remains the most sensible and effective framework. I I ask for an extension of time, if I may.
So,
Speaker.
Member for Oatley, you have unlimited time. I'm sorry about the clock, but
I thought
please
so.
proceed.
I
Yeah,
thought so.
yeah.
But I'll be very brief.
Thank you.
Where lower speed limits are justified, they should absolutely be implemented. And for those decisions must be made through the established process that consider local conditions, the expert advice, as I mentioned before, and the community views, feedback, and community. Speaker, improving road safety is a shared responsibility, and it is a goal that every member of this House supports. But achieving that goal requires careful policy design, not blanket legislative mandates. And for these reasons, the opposition will be opposing the Road Legislation Amendment Speed Limits Bill 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Member for Oatley, and I call the Minister representing the government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for Balmain for bringing forward this private member's bill and for her undoubted commitment to road safety. I'm pleased to speak to this bill and on our broader commitment to road safety on behalf of the government. While we welcome the discussion on road safety, at this stage the government is not able to support the passage of this bill. The bill seeks to amend the New South Wales road rules to set a blanket 30 km/h speed limit at school zones, school bus stops, in high pedestrian and local areas. The bill also sets the urban default speed to 30 km/h. Finally, the bill sets a maximum speed limit of 10 km/h in shared zones. I will first set out some background on how speed limits are set in New South Wales. There are two ways that speed limits are set on New South Wales roads. Through a speed zone review, where Transport considers the road and its environment against the speed zoning standard, and the speed limit is marked by posted speed limit signs. Secondly, in parts of the network which has not been individually reviewed, the default speed limit is 50 km/h in a built-up area. While the government appreciates the members' intention behind the bill, we support an approach which is more collaborative with the community and considers the case-by-case road environment. We believe that we can get better outcomes for New South Wales by working with communities to consider decisions on a local level. Things such as what the road is used for, who uses the road, and what is the nature of the road and its environment. We can then set the right speed limit rather than using a broad blanket approach which may not be the right speed across the board. The speed limits that are suitable in Balmain, for example, may not make sense in Belrose, or those that may make sense in Wyong may not be suitable for the Sydney CBD. We have to consider the road environment, the surrounding land use, the current road safety interventions, crash history, and a variety of other factors. I will also note that under our current settings, when it comes to shared zones, which are areas which have our highest level of pedestrian activity, and as the name says, are shared between vehicles and pedestrians, we already have a 10 km/h limit. In that sense, the bill is duplicating matters that are already existing practice. In relation to the blanket approach proposed by the bill, it is useful to look back to the last time that the default speed limit for built-up areas was changed. This happened back in 2003, when the speed limit for urban areas was reduced from 60 km/h to 50 km/h. While on paper, this may look like a similar change to the one proposed in this bill, the reality is that when that change was made to the default speed limit, over 96% of the population already resided in areas which had already adopted a 50 km/h speed limit. By considering the local needs first, the default could be adopted in a relatively straightforward way that did not lead to a significant and unexpected shift in existing practice overnight. Mr. Speaker, As I have mentioned, Transport for New South Wales considers speed zones on a case-by-case basis instead of taking a blanket approach. Any member of the public and any member in this place can request a speed zone review to be undertaken by Transport for New South Wales. Speed zones assessments, which can be a length of road or for an entire area, including several roads such as high pedestrian activity areas, are done on a case-by-case basis. This allows speed zone assessors to consider factors including crash history, crash risk, road characteristics, road function, roadside development, traffic characteristics, at-risk locations, and the presence of vulnerable road users. We do understand the evidence about setting safer speeds and particularly the risk for vulnerable road users. The evidence shows that lower speed limits lead to better road safety outcomes for all road users. Speed is the most critical risk factor in road crashes because it influences the risk of being involved in a crash as well as the severity of the crash outcome. We also understand that safer speed limits support urban vibrancy and placemaking outcomes, as well as higher uptake of active transport. There are several examples across the state where a 30-kilometre speed limit has been successfully implemented due to it being suitable for the local road environment. Those communities are enjoying the benefits that come with adopting a lower speed for an environment which does have more pedestrians, more vibrancy, by providing a greater emphasis on the placemaking needs in relation to that movement. Mr. Speaker, an example, it's not 30 kilometres per hour, but 40 kilometres per hour can actually be identified in my own electorate and a place, little village called Gorican. That was a shopping strip which on the other side of the road had an aged care facility where older people lived. It had a pedestrian crossing, but because of the traffic volumes on that road, there was a large number of people being hit trying to cross the road, mainly due to the fact that many of the older people took longer to cross the road than, say, young people would. So in consultation with the local council and with residents in the area, speed humps were initiated at both ends of the shopping strip, and the speed limit was dropped to 40 kilometres per hour. Now, of course, this did annoy some people who were upset that the general speed limit of 60 kilometres at the time, now 50 kilometres on that main road, it's actually called Main Road at Gorican. It's a very creative name, yes, Main Road at Gorican, was slowed down, but it was absolutely essential to protect those older citizens who were crossing the road there. It also acknowledged the fact that many people parked on the opposite side of the shops and then were forced to move across the road, many not proceeding to the pedestrian crossing, I might say, and were just running across the road. So in that case, it was very appropriate and the change was made. Now, the New South Wales government approach to speed limits recognises the fundamental evidence on road safety risk, which I was just talking about. There was a history of people being hit by vehicles, and there was engagement with the community, and they aligned the speed limits to the road type in that particular section of the road and to the environment, which was the shops and of course the residential area across the road, which had a lot of older citizens. I think that we all have the same goal of setting safe speeds and making our roads safer, and we need to determine the right way to get there. I'm also reminded of my colleague, the member for the Entrance, who's also run recently a campaign to slow down a section of road in his electorate, which was not far from a school area, and actually did achieve that change in speed limit. reducing the speed limit to make it safer. So where local MPs do engage with both council and with the Department of Transport, then those wishes are looked at. The correct monitoring of the road and consideration is given, and if all the planets align, then that reduction in the speed limit is put in place. One of the important parts of what the government's doing, and I acknowledge the minister's just come into the House, is recognising the role that speed limits have in our suburban and urban communities, and that's why the government is delivering under the current 2026 Road Safety Action Plan. The government has updated the speed zoning standard, providing more guidance, which is used by transport and also local governments to consider where those lower speed settings should be applied. The government has also been delivering under the plan to treat urban places and local streets with safety measures such as pedestrian crossing facilities, raised safety platforms and safer speeding settings, particularly in the lower speed environments such as 30 kilometres an hour and 40 kilometre zones. We will obviously be considering these local environments, speed settings and vulnerable road users as part of the next Road Safety Action Plan to 2031. Transport is currently undertaking public consultation sessions on the new plan, with information available on the Centre for Road Safety website. We also have an open survey for people who can't make it to a session in person, but would like to provide feedback to Transport on the next Road Safety Action Plan. I encourage the community to put in their views to help shape the next plan. And I think too it's important that communities do engage in that, and I think the Minister would agree with this, because many communities, such as my area where there's a lot of new housing, the traffic conditions and environment change. And I know the Minister listened very carefully, for example, in one of my suburbs, which is Woongarra, where there's the used to be called St Peter's, MacKillop Catholic College. When that school was put in, there was no houses surrounding it, but now developments happened all around it, and they had missed out on 40 kilometre per hour school zone signs and a crossing. And because of the Minister's excellent listening, those 40 kilometre per hour school zone signs have now been installed in that area. And I know that Council has a raised school crossing under consideration as well. So in that next plan, I think that local members, if they engage with their community, understand the changes that are going on across their electorates, there may be the opportunity to engage in that process and make sure that where necessary there's further changes. As I just said, that one of our most important things we have to do is achieve safe outcomes around schools. We know children are still developing physically as well as their decision making and cognitive skills to make safe decisions around roads. And that's why the New South Wales Government continues to invest in and to uplift school zone safety. Every New South Wales school zone has at least one school zone flashing light sign, with additional sets also installed outside many schools with multiple busy entrances. Flashing lights are high visibility treatments which support school zone signage, and there are more than 6,800 in place across New South Wales. We also have school crossing supervisors in place, and I see the lovely lady down at Warnervale Public School in the mornings, and give her a wave as she's there, whether it's a hot sunny day or a very rainy day. She does an excellent job. We also recognise that that school infrastructure sub-program is 50-50 state and federal funded, and it supports infrastructure uplift like zebra and raised pedestrian crossings, also known as wombat crossings, curb extensions, curb ramps, gutters and lighting. The Community Road Safety Fund also invests around $5 million per year in the early childhood and school education sectors to support schools and teachers in road safety education. And I think one of my roles as a principal at the start of each year and then on a regular basis was to remind parents to not assume that their young people would be seen by moving cars. And one of the worst things, and I still see it today, and it's one of the things that, as a former teacher and principal, really disturbs me, is the fact that that we have some parents who still park on the opposite side of the road, encourage their children to run between cars and come straight over to where they're parked instead of using the appropriate assigned crossing that usually has a crossing supervisor. So what my message to parents would be is teach your young people the right way to cross the road. Don't think because you're in a hurry, particularly on rainy days, which I see it the most, which is even more disturbing, that waving to your young person to come across the road because you can't be bothered getting out of your car or walking up and meeting them at the crossing is not a good safety message and could have absolutely tragic outcomes. So that community road safety education is absolutely vital, not just for children, but also for their parents. We have a framework of safety around schools which goes beyond just having lowered speed limits. That has been successful. The government is committed to building on it for the safety of the most vulnerable pedestrians in our community. But, Madam Speaker, that's not all we're doing when it comes to road safety. The Minns government is continuing to strengthen life-saving initiatives for all road users through safer roads, enforcement, technology, education and reform, including the delivery of a suite of reforms to directly deal with e-bike safety, a record investment of $2.8 billion in road safety initiatives, including extensive infrastructure safety upgrades across the state, supporting new enforcement measures, including the average speed camera trial for light vehicles, which is showing promising shifts in behaviour, seatbelt camera enforcement, and we have seen a 60% drop in non-compliance for seatbelt offences, and it just baffles me in this day and age why people still can't wear their seatbelt or wear it properly. Doubling mobile roadside enforcement sites with an additional 2,700 sites, so enforcement is spread more evenly statewide. The delivery of the Interactive Road Safety Learning Lab, the introduction of the most significant reform to motorcycle safety regulations for novice riders in nearly 20 years, an outcome of the 2025 New South Wales Motorcycle Safety Roundtable, improving transparency and targeting of safer road upgrades through published star ratings across 35,000 kilometres of state and regional roads, the delivery of the Bus Task Force and Demerit Point Integrity Task Force, fast-tracking maintenance on our roads to improve the road surface, including potholes, many potholes. The Minister tells us the number. What's the,
over 500,000.
Over 500,000 potholes. Biggest complaint we get to our office. Fast-tracking maintenance on our roads. I just said that one. Signing the National Road Safety Data Agreement with the Commonwealth. Heavy vehicle rest area improvements and level crossing innovations and upgrades. An ongoing comprehensive program of community education campaigns, evidence-based and targeting key behaviours that contribute to our road toll. Madam Speaker, as I mentioned, in our most recent budget, we made a record $2.8 billion investment in road safety over 4 years, reflecting that road safety is our number one priority in this portfolio. That $2.8 billion investment is making a real difference on our roads. We're investing in new raised wombat crossings, roundabouts, traffic lights, rumble strips, sealed shoulders on high-speed rural roads. Much needed. I travel a lot on rural roads, particularly in the Riverina, and that sort of upgrade will make a huge difference. Curb extensions, pedestrian refuges, centre line widening, crash barriers, and the list goes on. In regional New South Wales, we're implementing safety upgrades on the Barton Highway, Illawarra Highway, Kamilaroi Highway, Kings Highway, New England Highway, Oxley Highway, Princes Highway. I drove through those recently, and there's a lot of work going on down on the Princes Highway. Snowy Mountains Highway, and again, Madam Speaker, the list goes on. And in metropolitan areas, we're also extending school zones to better protect our most vulnerable road users. I just mentioned one of those at MacKillop Catholic College, including a recent extension of school zones around Wilkins Public School in Marrickville after a safety assessment by Transport for New South Wales and excellent, strong advocacy from the member for Summer Hill. So in conclusion, Madam Speaker, for the reasons I've outlined, while we absolutely appreciate the intentions of the member for Balmain, the government does not support the bill at this stage, but will continue to engage with local communities to deliver safe speeds on local streets where appropriate, where there's a strong safety rationale and strong community engagement. As the previous speaker also said, is that this has to be a fit-for-purpose policy, not a blanket policy that covers the whole state. The government agrees with that position, and on that basis, I'm sorry we can't support the bill, but we'll move on.
You need to keep going. He's still got...
The question is the bill be read a second time. I call the member for Campbelltown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm delighted to rise and make a very brief contribution to this road legislation amendment Speed Limits Bill 2025, and I would like to acknowledge the member for Balmain, and I thank her for bringing this before the House and her good intentions, which, as I know, all that she does is from a good place. However, as the former speaker said, the government is not in a position to support this, and I will go into those reasons further as I elaborate further. But before I do begin, I would like to acknowledge that the Minister is in the House today and acknowledge her strong commitment and passion for road safety right around New South Wales, but particularly in rural and regional road safety. Being a country woman herself, she understands as good as most as to the importance of road safety, particularly when it comes to speed limits. And again, whilst I commend the member for Balmain, this is from a good place, the government is of the view that this will have unintended consequences, which I will elaborate further. But further to the Minister's representations in her portfolio, road safety more broadly is the government's number one priority when it comes to the roads portfolio, and I welcome all discussions about this important topic, and also would like to acknowledge in my capacity as the chair of the Road Safety Stay Safe Committee, we are currently in the process of concluding an inquiry into road tolls in rural and regional New South Wales, and speed limits have been very much an intense part of that inquiry as well. So this bill would amend the New South Wales road rules to, alongside other changes, mandate 30 km/h speed limits at school zones, school bus stops, in high pedestrian and local areas. And I refer the House back to my previous comment when I reference the member for Balmain's good intentions, I know that at the forefront, in her particular area, I've only been to Balmain a couple of times, a bit far from Campbelltown, but the times I have been into that beautiful part of our great city, I do know the congestion and some of the serious road issues that they do have, which are unique to areas like Balmain, just like other parts of the inner city and indeed parts of the inner west. However, as I previously stated, the New South Wales Government cannot support this bill at this time for several key reasons, including consistency. As I said, I appreciate the motives of the member and from bringing this to bill, and I firmly agree that delivering safe speeds in our local communities is absolutely critical and remains a priority for the Minns Labor government. The New South Wales Government does not implement blanket changes to speed zones across the state or metropolitan area. Speed zones need to be set with consideration to the local road environment and on a case-by-case basis. The government is continuing to strengthen life-saving initiatives for all road users through safer roads enforcement, technology education and reform, including delivering a suite of reforms to directly deal with e-bike safety, which is a continual and growing issue amongst each and every one of our communities, which I know is consistent with the issues in Balmain. The government has had a record investment of $2.8 billion in road safety initiatives, including extensive infrastructure safety upgrades across the state. The government is also committed to support new enforcement measures that include the average speed camera trial for light vehicles, which is showing promising shifts in behaviour. Seatbelt camera enforcement that has seen a 60% drop in non-compliance for seatbelt offences. That is a great outcome, and it's remarkable to think that people still, in the year of our Lord 2026 AD, still don't get the message to wear a seatbelt when driving a vehicle. Doubling mobile roadside enforcement sites with an additional 2,700 sites so that enforcement is spread more evenly statewide. Delivery of the interactive road safety learning lab. The introduction of the most significant reforms to motorcycle safety regulations for novice riders in nearly 20 years. This is an outcome of our 2025 New South Wales Motorcycle Safety Roundtable. The government has also improved transparency for the targeting of safer road upgrades through publishing star ratings across 35,000 kilometres of state and regional roads. Of course, the government has delivered of the Bus Task Force and the Demerit Point Integrity Task Force. Fast-tracking maintenance on our roads to improve the road surface, which we've seen in my own electorate and that around West and South West Sydney, particularly the government's ongoing commitment to finally see the upgrade of that Appin Road that has been overlooked for generations. With the House's indulgence, I would like to touch on that briefly. With the Minister's support and the government's commitment, we finally are seeing the Appin Road upgraded to a level that makes that road a lot more safer than what it has ever been. That notorious road, that road that I used to run coal trucks up and down during the night, and I know how slippery it can be, but when we're upgrading this road in cooperation with the private sector, we are also seeing a priority for the protection of our wildlife. And I was only out there the other day to look at the accelerated construction of the koala underpasses. I'm delighted to advise the House that I was advised whilst out there that in the last 12-month period, we tragically had seen one koala death on the Appin Road. In the 12 months prior to that, before the fencing and the other upgrades put into place and implemented by the government, there were 9 tragic koala deaths in that same particular area. I'm not suggesting that this war is over or anything like that. there is still so much more to do for the protection of our habitat and the conservation of our valued koala colony. But back to the specifics of this bill, and I thank the House's indulgement for clarifying that. Heavy vehicle rest area improvements, level crossing innovations and upgrades, and finally, the ongoing comprehensive program of community education campaigns that is evidence-based and target key behaviours that contribute to our road toll. I would like to conclude where I began, and that is thanking the member for Balmain for bringing this before the House and acknowledge her passion and commitment for the right reasons for a good outcome. Unfortunately, the government's not in a position to support at this time, but please do not read that support as a lack of intent of your goodwill. I thank the House.
Question is the bill be read a second time. I call the member for Newtown.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise to contribute to the debate on the Road Legislation Amendment Speed Limits Bill 2025 and acknowledge the passionate and dedicated work of my Greens colleague and active cyclist, pedestrian, and someone that is very keen on making sure that our streets are safer, the member for Balmain and her team, on their efforts on this bill. And also want to acknowledge, Speaker, the incredible 13 organisations that have indeed been advocates and have signed on to an open letter endorsing the calls for safer speeds on local neighbourhood streets. The endorsements for these reforms came from the Royal Australasian College of Road Safety, the Little Blue Dinosaur Foundation, Road Sense Australia, Doctors for the Environment Australia, the National Trauma Committee and the New South Wales RACS Trauma Committee within the Royal Australian College of Surgeons. Safe Streets to School, 30 Please, Walk Sydney, Bicycle New South Wales, Better Streets, Parents for Climate and Climate Change Balmain and Rozelle. Can I just say, Speaker, that a number of representatives of those organisations were due to be here for this debate in the chamber today, but given the time lagged, I would like to, on behalf of the Greens and indeed on behalf of the member for Balmain, thank them for joining us today and thank all of those people. It is an unpredictable thing, the timing of the chamber, and I just want to say thank you so much for their ongoing support, for the support of those organisations and indeed for those who are coming to try and watch debate around this bill take place, because we know that this bill will is seeking to restrict speed limits in school bus zones and school zones to no more than 30 kilometres an hour, restrict the default speed limit to a shared zone to 10 kilometres per hour, define a high pedestrian traffic area and a local traffic area with speed limits restricted to no more than 30 kilometres per hour, reduce the default speed limit to build up residential areas to 30 kilometres per hour and require an open and transparent review of speed limit frameworks in New South Wales to monitor the rule change and identify further reforms as may be required. Our shared streets and roads should be safe spaces for everyone in our community and not just for cars. But right now, according to the Towards Zero, more than 1,100 pedestrians are hit on New South Wales roads each year. In 2025, New South Wales recorded 54 pedestrian deaths, most of which occurred on ordinary local roads. These are devastating numbers that each represent a person and a family who has experienced a serious trauma and loss on our roads, many of which could have been preventable. These numbers reflect a culture that is far too car-centric and that fails to truly keep up with our community's safety needs. We know that there are clear evidence-based changes we can make to our roads right now to bring these numbers down to zero. It is important for us to remember that bringing these changes into place should not just involve public-funded campaigns where we put up big billboards and signs saying Towards Zero. To be honest, when I first saw those signs, I thought all of a sudden the government was going to stop coal and gas, because obviously getting to net zero is a good thing. But no, we've just adapted that slogan, put it on a billboard and hope that everyone is safer. As the member for Balmain knows, people don't just get safer by putting a sign on a billboard. You also have to act based on evidence. And the clear evidence suggests that if a pedestrian is struck by a car going 50 kilometres per hour, which is the current default local limit for urban streets, they only have a 10% chance of survival. But if a person is struck by a vehicle moving 30 kilometres an hour, they have a 90% chance of survival. Way more effective than the billboard. We could just readapt the billboards about no new coal and gas, no existing coal and gas. We could keep up the toward zero billboards, and we could also at the same time reduce the risk of pedestrian and cyclist safety and death. The gulf between a 10% chance of survival and a 90% chance is massive, and should be all the proof that we need to show that these practical and effective measures can and do save lives. This percentage difference isn't just a number, but would reflect a significant amount of road trauma and harm that could be prevented. We know that some of our most vulnerable community members on our roads are children who are still learning about personal safety. They are easily distracted, over-enthusiastic, in the case of my daughter, by a cat or a dog on the other side of the road, which means that she is more eager to go and pat them than she may be to look if a car is coming. Making these simple changes would make the roads calmer and safer for everyone in our communities. Locals in my electorate of Newtown know all too well just how dangerous it is and can be when the fast road traffic hits, and cyclists and busy pedestrians are all sharing the same highly compact and very busy streets and roads. I hear from community members all the time who are concerned on their streets about the lack of safety crossings, and also the fact that they are walking their kids regularly to and from school with cars zipping straight past them. In many of our streets in the electorate of Newtown, the footpaths themselves are very narrow. It means that regularly, if you've got prams or scooters or other kind of things, you're having to move from the footpath to the road and back again. We know that people in wheelchairs are having the same challenges. And in addition to that, we know that there is a lot of frustration at the congestion on the roads, which means that people will take the side streets and speed through them with an attempt to go faster. In addition to that, anyone that's been out in Newtown or Enmore for the night knows that often when the Enmore Theatre is packed, or indeed there are other busy parts, that people can spill onto the road, sometimes not in the most sober of states, and that can cause further problems and dramas, particularly on the local side roads. I want to turn now to speak briefly to the fact that Australia is lagging behind global standards when it comes to this. And this is reflected by the harrowing numbers that I read out earlier. And now more than ever, in the middle of a fuel and emergency and a climate crisis, it is critical that our streets are safe and accessible for everyone in our community to use on a daily basis. We should be moving towards zero road deaths, and it is something we must all take seriously. And we can do this right now by the government choosing to support this bill. Unfortunately, what we've seen is the government has indicated that they do not support safer streets through this bill. Very disappointing, particularly given, as I said, the amazing 13 organisations that have signed on in an open letter in support of the Greens member for Balmain and her leadership in this space. And I want to acknowledge the fact that when we talk about leadership in this space, we need to recognise that bringing a bill forward to this chamber and forcing the government to act is not something that happens in isolation from what happens in the community. That those community groups will now actively work and campaign to push for this change, being, I think, fairly outraged and quite upset by the fact that the government isn't listening to their voices and their views. But I would say to those 13 community organisations and to everybody else in the community that feels worried about their kids, about their own safety when they are dealing with dangerous speed limits and when they are being faced with the trauma and tragedy of some kind of road accident and the serious impacts that that can happen, I would say that there is hope, and that hope is to say that based on the track record and of the member for Balmain, it takes the government about a year, if not a little bit longer, a year and a half, to get on board with the Greens plans. So back in June 2024, the member for Balmain introduced a private member's bill that would ban balloon release in this state, because obviously the idea of just sending plastic into the air, having it come down and destroy our environment, in other circumstances we would call that littering. So the member for Balmain came in here, did the work for the government, led the policy agenda, brought forward a plan to ban the release of balloons. Lo and behold, just this sitting week, what do we see from the New South Wales Labor government? taking Greens policy, introducing a bill to ban balloon release. So I would say to all of those people who are genuinely keen to see the New South Wales Labor government act, the Greens are here doing the hard, progressive policy work to force New South Wales Labor to act. And at some point, if they stop being so arrogant on this, and indeed so many other issues at the moment, we will see potentially some change. The easier option would be to recognise the leadership that the member for Balmain has when it comes to delivering on environmental, climate and active transport solutions, and simply support this bill here today, because in doing so, the government will reduce the amount of road deaths and the amount of serious trauma and harm caused to cyclists, pedestrians and indeed everyone in our community who deserves to be able to walk around with safety.
Question is the bill be read a second time. I call the member for Liverpool.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I also rise to speak on the bill brought before the House by the member for Newtown, and I thank the member for bringing this discussion about road safety to the House today. As I mentioned yesterday in a contribution regarding the demerit points bill, road safety is the government's number one priority when it comes to the roads portfolio, and I acknowledge the Minister in the House right next to me, and I welcome all discussions about this important topic. Of course, the New South Wales Government recognises that there is compelling evidence that reducing speed limits significantly lowers road trauma on New South Wales roads because of this government's 2026 Road Safety Action Plan. It includes a commitment to implement safer urban speeds, including 40-kilometre zones where appropriate, rather than through legislating default speeds that may not be suitable to local road environments and circumstances. And I note the member for Newtown's comments about signage having a limited impact on people's behaviour when it comes to driving or when it comes to speeding. And I reflect on the situation that residents in Elizabeth Hills, located in my community, are facing at the moment, where despite developing a local traffic management plan, the response from Liverpool Council has been to just simply put forward that lowering the speed limit is the way to respond to some of their concerns and be done with it. So lowering the speed limit from 50 kilometres an hour to 40 kilometres an hour, despite the fact that there are extensive issues around the behaviour of people in a residential area. But apparently just arbitrarily reducing the speed limit across the board is the only way to do it, and that's that. But as I mentioned, there was a local road traffic management plan that was commissioned, which showed that other measures were needed. Treatments like chicanes, roundabouts, speed humps, and other ways of improving not only road safety, but the behaviour of people who are speeding in our areas was also vital to ensuring the success of a vision to reduce speeds in the area. And the fundamental point, and that's the fundamental point that I'm trying to convey, that what might work in Balmain, what might work in Newtown, may not necessarily work in other communities. I know for certain there are other considerations in communities like mine and in other parts of Western Sydney. And, further to what the member for Newtown was talking about, it's not a matter of just simply waving a magic wand and pretending that a bill brought to this House will resolve issues and will bring community with us when it comes to addressing some really challenging issues out in the community. It requires a little bit more work, a little bit more thought to bring some of those parts of the puzzle into line in order to successfully prosecute change. Engaging the community on reducing speed limits is very important. Where a clear need exists, speed limits can be reduced to tackle road trauma on New South Wales roads. And as members of the House might be aware, speed limits on the network can be set in two ways, either by default, where roads without specific signage follow a default speed limit of 50 kilometres per hour in built-up areas, and 100 kilometres an hour outside built-up areas, or by signposting where Transport for New South Wales sets a limit through a speed zone review that is conducted in line with the New South Wales speed zoning standard. Indeed, any member of the public and any member of this Parliament can request a speed zone review takes place to consider changing a speed limit, and I would encourage the member for Balmain to consider this pathway as it reflects a more nuanced approach when it comes to addressing speed limits in specific areas. This standard was released by Transport for New South Wales in 2023, significantly uplifting the approach to speed management in this state. It's been reviewed and refined since that time to ensure that New South Wales remains up to date with best practice and with research. The New South Wales Speed Zoning Standard provides guidance so that there is consistency across speed limits and that the road type and usage aligns with the speed. The standard is aligned with Australian standards and Austroads guides so that it also achieves a level of consistency with other Australian states and territories. The standard also embeds the New South Wales movement and place framework into review processes. The framework aims to create safe and successful streets and roads by balancing the movement of people and goods with the amenity and quality of places. It reflects the reality that our roads have a myriad of uses for the people of this state. The speed zoning standard sets out options for speed limited areas, which include school zones, high pedestrian activity areas, and shared zones that facilitate low speed environments. Specific guidance on their design and installation is provided to ensure that the speed limit aligns with road and street designs, supporting greater compliance. Recent enhancements have been made to the New South Wales speed zoning standard to reflect that 30-kilometre zones can have a place in some circumstances alongside other speed limits. And to reinforce my fundamental point about the importance of community consultation, the importance of nuance, and the importance of recognising what communities different measures work within, I want to bring to the House the example of a speed limit that was changed to 30 kilometres an hour in the Liverpool CBD in July of 2020, in the middle of COVID. Basically, the speed limit was changed outside a local high school. However, it also was right in front of a speed camera. The speed camera was not.
Sorry, Member for Liverpool. Pursuant to the earlier resolution of the House, it being 3:08, the time for consideration of general business orders of the day for bills having expired, I sent down resumption of the interrupted debate as an order of the day for a later time. The clerk will now read the next item of business.
Albury Infrastructure Projects, resumption of the interrupted debate.
I'm just going to seek some advice from the clerk. Just give me a moment. I'll just see who the last speaker was. Just a moment. Call the member for Port Macquarie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I congratulate the member for Albury in raising